Social stuff is up.
Bum 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. You have reached the Total Soccer Show live stream lobby. Can you give us a beep bop, Graham?
Beep bop.
There we go.
Bloop.
Snoop-a-loop.
Snoop.
All right.
Beep. Blorp.
Have a good show, gents. Welcome to the Total Soccer Show World Cup Daily. On this show, we're looking back on Sunday's 4 games in which Germany were in heaven when they scored 7. Holland and Japan had impressive forces in the battle of the dark horses. Ivory Coast fans were able to rejoice when they beat South America's hipster choice. And Tunisia found it hard to proceed in their big match with Sweden. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today from our Los Angeles headquarters, hi, Taylor Rockwell.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. It was a fun day today. 4 games and 19 goals, I think, by my quick count.
Woo!
Not bad. Not a bad rate of return.
Not a bad rate of return at all for a World Cup day. Graham Ruthven, how are you?
I'm very well. I echo Taylor's sentiment. Interesting games. Germany scoring 7 in a World Cup. Do we think Brazilians watching that game got some sort of World Cup PTSD?
I think
feeling
it's
okay.
I'm very disappointed. It speaks to the very poor quality of this expanded tournament. If a German team can beat a team 7-1, like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. I know.
What's the point? What's
Game's
the point in
over.
any of this? I did mean to speak to you, Graham, about the...
The sound you just heard was everyone in Brazil turning off the lights.
Hey,
the
boy.
millions that were there. Are no
No,
longer
don't
there.
go, Joao.
Graham, it's a Sunday. Typically on a Sunday, you watch between 17 and 24 games. So how's it been, this vast reduction of watching only 4 today?
Yeah, I mean, it's been nice and easy, right? Nice and easy on Sunday. I actually didn't even watch all 4 games today. I did not watch the Sweden-Tunisia game, which seemed to be a bit of a banger from what was going in, of what I saw of it, the goals were going in. So I look forward to hearing from these 2 fine gentlemen who I think are our Sweden and Tunisia experts.
Very much so, including but not limited to Mr. Joe Lowry. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Ryan. It's nice to see you. It's nice to be with you. Like I haven't seen you and been with you all day. You too as well. I need folks out there to know that Graham did not watch the Sweden game because he hates flat pack furniture. That's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
If he has to build it himself, listener, he's not for it.
Yeah, what am I paying you for?
Right.
That's part of the price. Stop shortchanging me. You personally, Ryan Bailey.
Stop it, Ryan.
Spoken like a true person who came on a business class flight here. That's all I say.
That's for the Patreon audience only.
Speaking of which, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is the best way to support us in Graham's flying proclivities. There is lots of bonus content on there, including little house tour today we did of our studio and live-in residence. TSS LA HQ is looking fine on the bonus feed. Go check us out there. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. Lots of bonus episodes and fun. And access to our Discord server where a small amount,
A smattering?
all the cool kids hanging out on the Discord. Thank you for the prompt there, Taylor. Excellent stuff. Why don't we talk, first of all, about the Netherlands 2, Japan 2. Am I right to call that a dark horse battle just to set the table?
In terms of Japan, certainly feels like Netherlands maybe have a bit too much pedigree, like historically, I guess, to be labelled as dark horses.
Have they?
Well, they've made 3 finals. So
How many did they win?
How many have England won in the last 60 years?
That's low.
Touche. Fine. All right. Reject my premise of the dark horse battle. That is absolutely fine. We had Japan falling behind twice in this one, but coming back each time, of course. I think, Taylor, if not the most entertaining, then the highest quality game so far. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I am obligated to say that USA 4, Paraguay 1 is the best game of the tournament so far. But this is, I think, for neutrals, for just general entertainment from start to finish, probably the game of the tournament thus far. I feel like the Dutch came out in an interesting lineup. They did some interesting things in terms of the formation and approach, but also some of the personnel. And I felt like had a good game plan, and I think executed it pretty well. I think Japan, for their part, played the exact game we thought they can play when they're like need to have their backs against the wall. They can defend deep, they can clog lanes, they can make life really difficult. And then they are capable of also hitting on the break if they need to. But once the Dutch took the lead, they're also able to come out of that shell, the Japanese, and play really like progressive, pretty attacking soccer with a high degree of technical ability. And that's what I think makes Japan so interesting to watch, is that they can be ultra defensive and then they can be really attacking, like at the like drop of a hat, and it's kind of amazing to see.
Yeah, I think this was probably the first game of the tournament so far where it felt like both teams were able to impose themselves in different periods of the match. There was that ebb and flow. The match had multiple different phases. I know Brazil and Morocco was a heavyweight clash, and that was interesting in its own right. Kind of feel like Brazil were quite poor in that match generally. We're coming away from this one, I think we saw the positives, the strengths of both the Netherlands and Japan. And obviously the Dutch had much more of the ball in the first half, but they really struggled to create against that Japanese low block. And Taylor, we were talking about the broadcast commentary that we were watching, and they were kind of focusing on Japan's inability to get out, and they were getting some heat for being
they're staying 10 to 15 yards too deep. Eventually this is going to cost them. The Dutch are already kind of probing, and were they probing, Graham?
Well, I mean, I guess they were trying to probe, but it felt like Japan had kind of they'd anticipated this dynamic, and they were more than happy to stay compact and ask the Netherlands to break them down, which they weren't able to do. And there were some of the things that the Dutch were doing that I found a little bit confusing, particularly the use of Denzel Dumfries, where he was being used as a stay-at-home right-back behind Crescencio Somerville. And I know, and Taylor, you pointed this out when we were watching it, there were triggers where Dumfries and Somerville would switch to try and get Dumfries away from a defender and into space. But in my opinion, it resulted in having two players who want separation in that area of the pitch where there was no separation and congested it. And that kind of played into Japan's hands. And just generally, I felt the Dutch were... And look, their fans might be saying, I told you so, because a big deal was made of Xavi Simons and his injury. Just a lack of nimbleness in the final third, where they had a lot of the ball, but they needed to eliminate some Japanese defenders, and that wasn't really happening in the game until, I guess, the Van Dijk opener.
And it's an interesting question for the Netherlands, because you look at this team, there is not a ton of obvious chance-creating quality in this Dutch team. And so in that way, I think the first half of this game, where they dominated the ball and Japan absorbed a lot of pressure, Japan coming out of their shell much more when they go down the first time, in the second half, and then they go down again and they fight their way back both times. And that back and forth nature, I think, is what made this game so much fun. But the Dutch don't have a ton of obvious chance creators. You look at the midfield three, De Jong largely operated deeper in this game as that single pivot at times. Gravenberch and Reinders, none of those are 10s. Then you get to the front line. Daniel Malen is not a 9 who really is going to bring a lot of players into the game. Somerville is not an elite player this tournament, even though he scores a really nice goal in this game. A lot of weight is on Gakpo, and I think probably a lot of weight is on Dumfries in an ideal world, Graham, to your point. But he was stapled so deep for so much of this game that we didn't really see the Dutch, I think, even come close to their best. Neither of these teams, by the way, sniffed a single expected goal. I think both were still a ways off of that. There were some bangers in this game. I don't think I saw a whole lot from the Netherlands that made me feel confident in them at this tournament.
And what do you put that down to, Joe? Is it what Ronald Koeman's set them up to be? Like maybe like the wing backs aren't as marauding as we'd expect, for example?
They certainly were not marauding in this game. You had Mickey van de Ven playing as at left back. And later in the second half, when the Dutch were sort of trying to push for a winner, they'd made a bunch of changes. I don't think they expected the Japanese to get back into this game. And Van de Ven was the width provider on the left, and there was no winger over on that side. He was way overextended, and that's a center back turned left back turned left-sided width provider. It just didn't click. And Graham, you were saying throughout the second half, as the Dutch were sort of trying to protect their lead and failed at doing it, and then trying to come back into this game, this is why some of the Netherlands fans are not enjoying Ronald Koeman.
For sure, this was classic Ronald Koeman in the second half, where the Dutch have the lead and then he makes the changes. I've just got them in my notes here very quickly. So it was Quinten Timber and Koopmeiners who come on for Reinders and Somerville. Those were, I think there was actually 3 changes.
And Memphis for Daniel Malen.
Yeah, right. Okay. I mean, that one's a little bit more like for like, I guess. But like the other two were they were defensive minded, right? Like,
I mean, it was right up until Memphis miscontrolled the first ball to him, and then Koeman made another change and moved him further back. So even there, it's a little bit of that's not a lot of patience, Ronald. You're making changes pretty quickly.
I mean, Memphis Depay. I mean, who are we to doubt Memphis Depay, the all-time top scorer in Netherlands national team history? Kind of look like a player who's not.
Is that true?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, it's quite incredible. I know it's sensational stuff. And kind of looked like a player who's now spending his career in the Brazilian league. As like strong as the Brazilian league is, his touch just looked a little bit off and maybe not up to the level of some of his teammates. But yeah, it was those other 2 changes, Koopmeiners and Quinten Timber. They were designed to protect this game for the Dutch. And you can look at it 2 ways. Like, I know the Dutch don't like that, like emotionally and culturally, I guess, the land of Cruyff, that's not really what they want to impose themselves at all times on games. It also didn't work. Like, Japan were able to impose themselves much more after the Netherlands made those changes. So, yeah, not impressed with them in that sense.
I agree on the changes, and I think that was just trying to see it out, change it up, get fresh legs on there, maybe cause some new confusion for Japan. But I think if anything, it just kind of disrupted the game plan that the Dutch had that to that point. I personally, though, still think that this is, in the end, like a pretty good result for both teams. Probably a better result for Japan, who I think have fewer questions to figure out after this one. But I understand kind of a lot of what I think Koeman was trying to do. I think Malen obviously gives you speed and an ability to kind of get in behind and stretch that back line if if they're allowing that to happen. I think putting Van de Ven as your left back, which Joe liked, then didn't like, then liked again, then really liked. It was an interesting experience. Right. It was a roller coaster of sorts. I think that allows Gakpo to have a ton of freedom down the left, and I thought he was really impressive individually for the Dutch. It felt like he was the one who was kind of trying to take people on. He felt like the only player who could kind of beat somebody individually. Graham said at one point in the first half that the Dutch are missing a player who can drop a shoulder and just beat someone, and that felt like Gakpo was the most capable of doing that for most of this game for them. And then on the right-hand side, I hear what you're saying, Graham, about Dumfries kind of staying deeper. It seems like, from what I think Joe was saying during the game, just credit everywhere, that was meant to try to kind of pull the Japanese out a little bit, and then maybe you can attack in behind or find some space in there. But even if they couldn't, it felt like Somerville would move central, then Dumfries would advance, then Somerville would move into that space that had been vacated, and you could then kind of find pockets to operate. I just think it was a really strong defensive display from the Japanese that nullified a lot of what the Dutch were able to do, such as it was in that final third. But then it ends up being a really good header from Virgil van Dijk and a really good reverse camera angle where you can watch him watch the ball all the way into the goal. I loved that one. The only thing I loved more than that was Graham's line of he gets his big bounce on it.
That's right.
No
way. That's the technical explanation of what Virgil van Dijk did.
Just for clarity for the listener, the bounce means the head.
That's right.
Yeah, the bounce, right? The bounce.
Yeah.
That's
correct. Just for clarity.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think the Netherlands were the narrow favorites going into this game, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Coming out of it, I feel like Japan are a bit more built for tournament soccer. Is that fair to say? Given how compact they are, the way they're happy not to have the ball, they're very organized, and they can have those dynamic moments going forward very efficiently, it seems.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it kind of reminded me of Morocco's performance against Brazil, where they have that toggle of they're not just a one-trick pony. They have different... I'm using all the cliches here, strings to their bows. But you get the point I'm trying to make.
They have a lot of tools in their belt.
Tools in the shed. Sharpest tool in the shed. That's what I was going for.
If anything, the tools were too sharp, I'd say.
That's the one. In tournament football, you're going to have to react to different phases and in different circumstances and different matches. And we saw that in 90 minutes from Japan here, just as we did from Morocco in their match. I think the most exciting thing for Japan is it feels like they've got more to give than this in other matches. They've drawn with the Netherlands. And they deserve to get something out of the game. And ordinarily, you'd think that's a big result for them. And yet, I don't know if they played that well. It feels like they've got another gear or maybe even two gears to go to in this tournament. And I think if they can do more to get Kubo into half spaces and on the turn, I thought we saw glimpses from him, but maybe he didn't have his normal influence on this match. And I certainly think they can give Ueda more service. Yeah. There was one Ueda opportunity when Kamada played an incredible splitting pass from deep, and he was in behind, but the angle was a little bit tight, and he sort of sliced it wide of the goal. If they can get him into the penalty box more often, or even into those quick transition moments, then I think that could be something that really moves the needle for Japan. I think also if they can get Maeda to be the one-man pressing machine as he is for Celtic, I genuinely think he's world-class at that one specific quality, nothing else. But it feels like they've got more to get out of these players in this team.
Yeah. I think for the Dutch, I think my final takeaway from this one is that if they end up making a run, I kind of think we look back on this as a sign of how they were able to do so, because I think there's an argument that this is Ronald Koeman respecting his opponent and not expecting to beat a Japanese team that could be perceived as weaker, because they're not and haven't been in past tournaments. And so again, I look at that left-hand side for a moment and some of the midfield personnel that were deployed, and you've got Mickey van de Ven, we already talked about. You've got Tiani Reinders as kind of your left-sided central midfielder, and you've got Frankie de Jong as your single pivot, but oftentimes looking like another center back, basically, because he's following around and doing so much defensive work. And then I wonder, like, well, why were they deployed that way? And the Japanese right side is Takefusa Kubo and Ritsu Dewan, like, who can so clearly combine and do so many different things individually, but then as a unit play off each other so well, like hit little 1-2s, have like quick little interchanges that get in behind defenses. And I think in some ways that could be seen as the Dutch respecting the talent of their opponent. So if they make a run, that might be seen as Koeman, or you could look back on it as Koeman making like good defensive adjustments, good defensive decisions, and then trying to overload the other side to make something happen. If they don't, then maybe it is exactly what we said, which is kind of a lack of that creative talent coming to bear.
Taylor's tied a nice bow on the Netherlands. I'll try to tie a bow on Japan. I think this Japan team is so fascinating, and we talked about them coming into the tournament. Coached by Hajime Moriyasu, who's been in charge of this team since 2018.
Look sharp as well.
Yeah, always look sharp.
Mm.
That's a long time. That's a really long time in international soccer, where you don't see a lot of coaches getting that sort of runway. He was in the youth national team setup in Japan before that. He understands the program. He understands the rigors of international soccer and what makes it unique. Mauricio Pochettino had this quote after the win over Paraguay that you don't really get to coach the players outside of major tournaments because you only have a training session here, training session there, a flight here, a flight there, and then all of a sudden players are back to their clubs. Because this Japan team has had so much continuity for so long, they are able to do multiple things. And where I'm going with this is a group that I think is poised to be very, very tricky from this point forward, where you have Sweden now on 3 points, and we'll get to their win over Tunisia later. And then you have Japan and the Netherlands both on 1. Maybe all 3 of those teams get out. Maybe they don't. We'll find out as time goes on. But Japan now have 2 games against teams that don't really want to dominate the ball. Sweden, we saw today, didn't really have an appetite to totally dominate the ball throughout the entire game against Tunisia. And we know Tunisia do not want to dominate the ball as much as Hannibal wants them to. So Japan are going to have to show a different side of themselves, a different side than they showed in the first half and something more akin to what they showed in the second half. I don't know how that's going to go for them. I don't really know, Ryan, sort of where you launched this before, if they are the perfect fit for tournament soccer, or at least for this group of tournament soccer. But I do know that I think maybe more than any group outside of the US's group, this is the one that I'm most interested in right now.
One final tiny little point for me. How long has Moriyasu been there?
Since 2018.
So a good long while, as Joe said. But Graham and I were talking about this during the game, that in our Soccer 101 episode on like Japanese football, the Japanese have a 100-year plan to win the World Cup. And I believe we are in year 30 of that. So Moriyasu, just a baby. He's got 92 years to go. But like, you look at the progress that program has made. You look at the progress the league itself has made, how they've moved teams around and found more stability and found more talent, and then did a better job of exporting it abroad while still bringing young players through. And this Japanese team has sort of gone from strength to strength to strength. It's interesting to see what will come in World Cups to follow this one, but for right now, I feel like they're in a very strong position. So too does the explosion behind me.
Wow, yeah, that was quite something. As is
an emphatic point. That's how I end my points. Is I have somebody off the distance blow something up.
I am reeling from 100-year plan. That's unreal.
We didn't even know what we were having for dinner at 7 o'clock and 6 o'clock tonight, and the Japanese over here are planning 100 years ahead.
I remember in business class learning about the Kaizen philosophy, where the Japanese philosophy in business is to make very small improvements very gradually over time. That is that. In very much demonstrated 100 years.
2 different business class mentions in this first segment, meaning completely different things.
Yeah.
Fascinating. English is just amazing, isn't it?
Wow.
Yeah.
What a time to be alive. Yeah. And what a time to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the Ivory Coast win over Ecuador and Germany scoring big against Curacao. It's Group E coming next. Join us then.
Do you think that was Kevin who blew something up behind us? That's his name, right? Kevin?
Keith.
Jesus, Joe.
The rampant disrespect.
I'm never gonna remember. I knew it wasn't Kyle. That's a plus, right? We've named our raccoon Keith.
That's our 6th roommate, and he hasn't been around this evening, and I have to believe it's because of this blatant disrespect by you.
Him. I'm sorry, guys. My fault.
I genuinely wonder what that was.
That was a big explosion.
Keith.
I wonder if it came out on the broadcast, but it was.
It's the notoriously rowdy Swedes after this win.
This is what you get live on YouTube, folks. Raccoon chat.
Yes, and booming explosions in yonder distance.
That you probably can't hear.
No,
I can see the Disney fireworks over in the horizon.
Should we start?
I'm very much enjoying that.
Yeah, let's do block.
Let's do the second half of this.
We'll go into B block, then we'll do some more Disney fireworks chat. Okay. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to World Cup Daily. We go now to the Ivory Coast 1-0 win over Ecuador. Ecuador had a 2-year unbeaten run going into this game, apparently, and that is now over, courtesy of the Ivory Coast, who hit the woodwork 3 times in this one as well. Amad Diallo, substitute Amad Diallo more specifically. There's some Disney fireworks going off behind me, it sounds like. Wonderful stuff. Diallo scoring late for the Ivorian win in this one. Joe, how do we feel about this one? Pretty entertaining, fairly even game.
Can I just say one thing really fast? I'm going to just put up this number, and then Joe, go ahead and talk.
Okay, maybe show the camera.
That was 7.
Yeah, okay,
that was 7.
There
Here
it
we
is.
go.
I don't know what Taylor's talking about, but I do think I actually have no clue what's happening. Right
we'll
now.
get there.
Okay. Wow, I'm totally shaken. I thought the Ivory Coast were better in this game. I thought they were deserved winners. It wasn't like they were wildly better, but they had the best player on the field, who was clearly the most influential player and created the highest volume of chances. And that's, I suppose, what this game is about in a lot of respects. Yan Diomande, to me, is the best player I've seen all summer long. In summer, I mean since Thursday. He was unbelievable for the Ivory Coast in this game. 19-year-old RB Leipzig player, kind of fresh off of a breakout season in the Bundesliga, maybe coming to a rich Premier League club near you as soon as August. I mean, he was unreal in this game. Starting on the right wing for the Ivory Coast, moves over to the left once Diallo comes on in the second half. It is eventually Ahmad who gets that goal for Ivory Coast, as you said, Ryan. But Diomande was the star of this entire match. It's his 1v1 dribbling ability. It's his vision. It's his dynamic movement. It's his audacity on the ball. He was matched up in the early stages on Piero Hincapié, who is maybe Ecuador's... Okay, Pacho's probably the staunchest defender for them. But he was starting in the Champions League final for Arsenal a couple of weeks ago. And Diomande made him look like... I don't know. I don't want to be too disrespectful. Made him look like a player that maybe didn't belong at the World Cup. He dominated that matchup against a legitimate top-class defender. It was unbelievable, the number of times that he skated by Hincapié into the box. I absolutely loved it. I've only just now realized that Taylor's taking tally marks of something I'm saying. Taylor, did we hit the 7 mark? I've made my point.
I mean, technically, yes. Technically, no, I guess. But I was curious how many times you were going to reference Diomande, and I'm counting pronouns when you said he did this and he did that. So we got to 12 there. And I feel like that's appropriate for just how good he was. But Joe was like legit. Joe was legit hype during this game.
Was it?
And should be.
I liked it.
Because every time the Ivory Coast were able to get something going, at least in the first half and for large chunks of the second, it's Diomande turning out of pressure when he has no business doing so. It's him just getting on the end of a ball or carrying a ball forward by himself. It is him keeping plays alive. It's him covering 30 yards like it's nothing to like have a ball recovery or put in a tackle. He was electrifying in this game, and I think is very much on the short list for like breakout best players of the tournament.
I mean, everything that the Ivory Coast did flowed through him. I mean, Bazumana Torre on the left side was not nearly as involved in the first half.
How dare you? Much
to Taylor's chagrin, but he was effective also. Everything for the Ivory Coast went down the wings, and most of it was funneled through Diomande. It was special to watch. Truly, watching him in this game crystallized for me just how good he can be. Because again, it's not like he was running up against, I don't know, a second Bundesliga defender. I mean, this is a legit player in Hincapié. He was going after. Not even this whole game.
Not even an out and out fullback, like a defensive-minded fullback, and he had him on toast every single time. And John Muller, who has released a really great app for the youth sport for the Athletic, has now released a stats app called Footy, which is great. I would recommend that. He posted a graph after this game of Diamande's dribbles. Joe, I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't seen it.
They are just straight lines into the box, like
Filthy.
About 30 of them. Like, he does not hang around. He doesn't bother with pretenses or anything like that. He is just geared to get into the most dangerous part of the field as quickly as possible. And I totally agree. He was the highlight of this match. I think he was the main reason. I know he doesn't actually play a role in the winning goal, but in terms of
the camera sure thought he did.
Yeah, I kind of thought he did as well, because what Singo did down the right side, I was like, oh, that's Diomande that's done that. Kind of a bit of character for Singo. It was an incredible turn and then sprint 40 yards down the field to set up Ahmad for the winner. But yeah, he was the main reason it felt like the Ivory Coast were going to find a way through here. And this is an Ecuador defense that conceded 5 goals in 18 qualifiers in CONMEBOL, where they played Argentina and Brazil and all those teams. This is arguably one of the strongest defensive units in this entire tournament, and Diomande made them look silly over and over again.
And I think Ecuador will be frustrated by the way this goes, obviously because of the loss, but they hit the woodwork 2-3 times. I think they have some good opportunities that on another day, this goes a very different way.
We can all hold up numbers on our hands. It was 3.
I still dispute the third one because I feel like it was already out of bounds before it hits the post, but either way, it's fine. And so I think on another day, Ecuador get a win here. Maybe they grind out a 1-0 win. Maybe it's a 0-0 draw. And I think other Ivory Coast teams also maybe don't end up pushing for the winner. I always think of, forget what World Cup it was, where they get like a last corner in the last seconds of the game and they take it short and the referee blows the whistle. And it's just a moment where like maybe something could have happened and they weren't able to capitalize. And I didn't have the highest of expectations for the Ivory Coast coming in. And then I in the first 10 minutes of this game, I start looking at their starting 11 and then I start looking at their bench. And I don't think I realized fully how deep this team is. And it's exemplified by like all the praise we've had for Diomande in this game. And it's like a center back who's been in the entire game, making a marauding run forward and then fighting a second half substitute, who's a very good Premier League player who scores that goal. And if you look at like, they've got Franck Cassier, Sekou Fofana, Diomande, Torre, Pepe. And then on the bench in this game is Adingra, Ahmad, Anjuan Boni from Inter Milan, who had a good season, a good breakout season, or debut season rather. Ibrahim Sangare, Evan Gassand. They've got a number of good center backs still on the bench. There's just a ton of depth to this Ivory Coast team that I think is very capable of springing more surprises from this point forward.
Right. And Joe, on Ecuador, is it fair to say that we thought they were going to be the favorite of this game? And have I framed them incorrectly as sort of the hipster, the darlings of the hipster world a little bit for this tournament as well?
I think you're correct in saying they were the favorite in this game. And so in that way, this is a surprising result, though not a totally shocking one. I also don't think maybe I forgot the framing of how you said the second bit, but I think they sort of were the hipsters pick in a lot of ways coming in, or one of them. Graham, I thought your discussion as we were watching this game about Ecuador and how stodgy they were, even despite the fact that I think the Ivory Coast created better chances than they did, which is not a huge shock. It's not like Ecuador just folded in this game. I don't know. I don't come out of this match feeling like they still can't be what you're talking about, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, there's two sides to this. One is that the result of this game, the outcome of this game, actually puts Ecuador in a pretty difficult spot with this group, with Germany, right? And Curacao being the other two teams. We can sort of discount Curacao, unfortunately for them, from that discussion. But Germany, Ivory Coast, and Ecuador, they're going to need a result against Germany, realistically, I guess, unless they run up the score against Curacao,
which is possible.
Yeah. But it does put them in a difficult spot. Puts them on the back foot. I would put it that way. But equally, like watching this game, and this is going to sound silly because obviously they lost this game. It was exactly what I expected from Ecuador. Like, they were very, very difficult to break down. I think I maybe underestimated just how much Ivory Coast would throw at them, to your point, Taylor. Not just Diamande, but the fact they've got Adingra to come off the bench. They've got Boni to come off the bench. I hadn't totally appreciated that. And that's actually going to be one of the biggest tests they'll face this entire tournament. But for the most part, their penalty box defending was good, was what I expected. The problem for them, the issue for them was always going to be, do they have the top end talent at the other end of the pitch to score goals? They don't score a lot of goals. And I know this is completely outcome dependent, but had they held on for 0-0 in this game, like, their game plan kind of would have worked. So I'm not completely writing off Ecuador, even though this is a disappointing result for them. I still think they've got something to offer at this tournament.
Yeah. And are we more bullish about Ivory Coast with buying stock?
I like some of the stock that I think you were selling sort of in your preview, Ryan, of this team, where you talked about there is a lot of quality in this attack. And Taylor, you just went through it in more detail, seeing those options come off the bench. The thing that I'll be curious to see more of from the Ivory Coast, and I guess maybe we'll get it in this group stage, maybe we won't against Germany. I imagine they'll be quite defensive in their 4-4-2, and against Curacao, I don't anticipate they're going to have a whole lot of problems. I want to see this team be a bit more balanced in how they approach the game. They never tried to build against Ecuador. They never tried to play, almost never tried to play through the Kessié-Fofana double pivot, and they didn't really need to. I didn't think Pepe was especially involved here. I don't think this is a perfect team, but for how much talent they have on the wings and the quality, I mean, Kessié and Fofana and Sangare are good players, right? Sangare came off the bench and I thought was a bright spot for this team, and he's a player that I've really liked for a long time. I think there is something here for this Ivory Coast team, and they will almost certainly, barring some sort of almost unimaginable fall, they will be in the round of 32 and maybe further than that.
Two things I think will be really interesting in the Germany game. One, I was really surprised by Ecuador didn't really try to focus more attacks and sustained possession through the middle, because it's a really good Ivory Coast team. We've already talked about it. But when you have Batoumata Touré getting forward, when you have Diamande getting forward, Wahai making runs in behind and staying higher, and then Pepe kind of roaming wherever he wants, like, there are times when they had a full front four, and when they turn the ball over, those four were 30 yards behind the play, and you have two central midfielders who are trying to do a lot of work in covering ground, but also kind of shielding that back line. And it never felt like Ecuador really tried to create an overload and have a 3v2 and just kind of pass their way through it. And then you're up against a back four where you can then have numbers bombing forward and create. It kind of felt like they kept ending up pushing the ball wide and then trying to kind of cross it in or go for low crosses. And even then, they still do create a little bit. So I think there's opportunities there. And I think Germany are more than capable of playing through. The other one that I think would be really interesting is to see if anybody tries to spotlight Doué, the right back for the Ivory Coast, because I felt like he was
grabby,
borderline a liability with that in mind. Yeah, he was so
he was touching
physical.
a lot of bunces. Bonces.
But there's at least, he gets a yellow in this game. There's at least two other moments in which he's either grabbing or shoving, and like, I think one of them isn't even called, but absolutely could have been, and really could have been in trouble, really could have gotten a second yellow. And if that's the way he defends consistently, I don't know, because I can't claim to be familiar with his defensive game. But if that's how he plays, if you put up somebody against him like a Florian Wirtz, who's going to get knocked around a little bit more, like it's going to look a lot worse. I feel like you're going to draw some cards, and I feel like that's another area where you can create problems for the Ivory Coast.
To be fair, he was up against Nkapie, and we've seen what he's got to grab back there. It's
Good point.
got some goods. So,
We've all seen it.
we've all seen it. We've all seen it in great detail. I think this group's going to be really interesting it's kind of going to be a battle for second place because, as you mentioned, Taylor, Germany have got Ivory Coast coming up next. Ecuador have got Curacao. So you expect Ecuador to get 3 from that with all due respect to Curacao. You expect Germany to win that too. So that puts Ivory Coast and Ecuador both on 3 points going into the final game. It's going to be some interesting ones on the final day, I think, in this group.
Yes, except that's then what Ecuador playing Germany and Ivory Coast playing Curacao.
I'm going to say Ivory Coast might edge that between the two of them.
I think there's a chance, and then it's head to head, right? We know as the tiebreaker, so I think that also could make things a little bit interesting potentially. But I do think Ivory Coast are getting at least 6 points in this group.
There you go. Excellent stuff. All right. Why don't we take one more quick break? When we come back, we'll talk about Germany's 7-1 win at a World Cup. Who'd have thunk it? And Sweden scoring big as well. Join us then. Another big explosion.
Boom. They can't hear them. That's what I've learned from the chat. Thank you to the chat for letting us know.
Can you read that?
You can read that screen.
No, on my laptop.
Oh, right, that makes more sense.
I know. I should have played the bit. Yeah, I can read it. What do you mean? Interesting. Yeah, I can see all of your tabs, Graham.
Thanks for watching live, guys. We appreciate you.
We do.
Why does Graham look like that?
That's not nice at all, chat. Come on.
It's the pleats. It's the pleats in his trousers.
We do have a comment in the chat while we're here. From @SoccerCooligans. I'm not totally sure who that is. Hi, TSS crew. First time, long time. Which comedian do you think had the best performance at the TSS live show in Los Angeles? I'll hang up and listen to your answer. Thanks. Any thoughts?
Christian Polanco is first, second, and third on that list and always will be. He was excellent as an opener. He's an excellent person and an excellent friend and a very funny guy. And there are no jokes here because he's just wonderful. And that's a fact. Also very handsome.
All right, that's enough touchy-feely.
You handled that well. Yeah. That was good.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Let's go back in.
And he smells terrific.
Rich mahogany. I'm trying to get as many Anchorman quotes in this bit as I can. Here we go. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to World Cup Daily. Let's go to Germany 7, Curacao 1, which kicked off our Sunday of soccer. A very dominant win, of course, for Germany over the debutantes here. But we did have, Graham, an amazing moment for the Curacao fans when they got their equaliser. There was the breath of hope which came into this game, and I felt quite emotional personally just watching it on TV, seeing how they were reacting to getting even on the score with Germany and scoring, obviously, their first goal at a World Cup against Germany. That's quite a good opponent to do it against. Dick Advocat at the start of the game was already in tears, overcome by the emotion of the event. So, obviously, a brief scare for Germany, and it wasn't much of an issue for them. But what a moment for Curacao that was.
Best moment of the World Cup so far. I know watching the four of us watching it in the room together today, I think that was definitely the loudest exclamation for any goal that was scored today. All 19 of them. That was the loudest celebration from us. And it was totally unexpected because I did predict this end scoreline from Curacao. I think we were saying this could be quite a heavy one for them, given what we'd seen from them prior to the tournament. That was an incredible moment. They equalised, but Germany were much more brittle than I expected as well. So it wasn't like it completely came out of the blue. And I know that's a funny thing to say when they end up losing 7-1 and the game clearly gets away from them in the second half, just I think because of the talent that Germany have. But there were moments in the first half, numerous moments in the first half where Curacao were committing bodies forward. Germany looked very brittle in defensive transition.
What do you mean by brittle? Just like solid or like non-moving?
The opposite of solid, I guess. Like, is that not a common term to use? Brittle. Like,
yeah,
fragile.
but do you mean like easily
immobile? Sort
of. You mean immobile, easily breakable? What are we talking here?
Just as if like no defensive structure. Like, I guess completely caught up with too many players up the field. Curacao would have like 3 against 3 or 3 against 4.
They didn't look bothered, Germany, really, to start this game. They looked like they didn't really feel like they had to be there.
The only time they looked bothered is when Curacao equalized and it comes to Nagelsmann. He's like, "Oh God, I'm gonna have to manage Chelsea when Xabi Alonso gets sacked." That's how this is going to go for me.
Was that before or after his outfit change? That's now so Germany played the U.S. as their last game, and then they played this game against Curacao. Nagelsmann changed in the middle of both games. I don't know why.
I can relate.
He's been watching Graham on the stream.
Graham's doing it 4 times a day. Keep going, Graham.
Yeah, but like there were moments in that first half where I guess that Germany midfield of Mecha and Pavlovic. I mean, the Mecha's a player. We were talking about this while we were watching. struggle to get a read on what he is. I think he's maybe someone who offers a bit of goal threat from the edge of the box. He certainly was in this game, obviously scores. But then you're leaving Pavlovic as like the single pivot defensively. And Curacao were committing bodies forward. They were really going at them. And so it wasn't a completely isolated moment. And I came away from this, even though they end up losing 7-1, a little bit more positive on their tournament chances, or at least of having good performances at this World Cup. So there's certainly stuff for them to celebrate coming out of this.
I mean, Livano Comenencia, he's going to be an icon in Curacao forever for that goal. It's deflect. It doesn't matter, right? This is a probably once in a tournament, maybe not, but potentially once in a tournament and once in a lifetime for him sort of moment. This is the smallest nation to ever qualify for a World Cup, both by population and by landmass. They were already one of the greatest stories of the tournament before they even showed up. And then they come out and score a goal against Germany, a team that's won the World Cup 4 times. That's the best thing, man. Like, that is absolutely the best thing. This, for that reason, for that moment, is one of my favorite games of the tournament. It was not ultimately one of the best games of the tournament. Germany turned it on, and they didn't really even have to move the dial all that far to the right. But there was that brief moment in the first half where they were embarrassed. Nagelsmann was contemplating his outfit change. And we thought maybe Curacao could do something special. And I guess in a certain way, they did.
Outfit change? Did he just take his jacket off? Wasn't that it?
No, he had like a striped shirt on that someone made a comment about, and then he completely
It was a
t-shirt.
It was a t-shirt
It was
later
like a
on.
polo at first, and then he had a shirt on. It's different.
That is different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can say for sure. Two shirts.
Joe, can we dig into Nagelsmann's system a little bit? And obviously, he seems to have this setup where he's getting great results out of Musiala, out of Havertz, out of Wirtz, and Dementia getting involved as well. What's he doing here? Is it a evolution revolution situation here?
I don't know that it's particularly evolutionary or revolutionary. I think it's just this game revealed to us something about how Germany want to set up. I don't think honestly there's a lot we can truly in our hearts take away from this Germany performance, other than didn't really show up in the first bit of this game. Didn't really have to. They took the lead, sure, but they didn't have the energy. Graham, and you broke that down well. But I think the thing we can take away is, well, what was the 11? Like, this was a legit German Julian Nagelsmann 11 in this game. And the tactical element of this that I saw from them in possession was Kimmich is playing as this right back for them. He stays deep, sort of almost as a cross between a right center back and another central midfielder. And then you have Nathaniel Brown, RIP, his U.S. men's national team hopes and dreams that apparently weren't hopes or dreams for him. He would push high on the left side. And so the width providers for Germany was Brown on one side and Sané on the other. And Sané, maybe a little bit of a controversial selection from Nagelsmann at this tournament, didn't have his best game. A couple of touches I think were wanting from him in the second half. But they did sort of need him on that right side to be the width provider, because that's not Kimmich's game. Then you have the double pivot that Graham talked about already. And then you have Musiala and Wirtz in the half spaces and Havertz up top. That's pretty good. Like, they didn't have to be at 100% in this game to win by 6 goals, which again tells you something. But I think this is going to be an approach that we see Nagelsmann go to. And Germany are going to control the ball against the other teams in this group. It's not just going to be Curacao. So I think we're going to see more, or at least variations of, or something very similar to how Germany set up in this game.
Yeah, and that front three that you spoke about there, Joe, of Havertz, Musiala, and Wirtz, I thought they worked really well in this game. The rotations between them on the edge of the box, and they all seem to be on a similar wavelength. And so I think there's plenty for Germany to work around there. Sané's an interesting one. We were talking about that during the game, where he's obviously playing in Galatasaray in the Turkish Super League at the moment. Controversial call-up. Now he's starting these games for Germany. But equally, you look through their squad, and in terms of his role as, I guess they need a little bit of verticality. They need someone to hold the width on that right side if Kimmich is going to be the right back. They've got literally no one else who's capable of doing that. So it feels like, unless there's going to be a fundamental system change from Nagelsmann, I would bet on him starting every single game for Germany at the World Cup, because they need that profile of attacker on the right side.
Yeah, I would agree entirely. And I would say, when we're looking at the lineup, like as it is, I also think I want to give credit to Nathaniel Brown, who Joe mentioned previously, because like when you know that you're not going to be able to start for a better national team, it's nice that you have like kind of a fallback to go to, which is an in-jest way of saying it is weird that there's like, under Poch, there's no chance that Brown is starting over Jedi Robinson. I don't think. And so it is weird to think that like ultimately he did make the right choice.
I'm not saying I know for sure he would start, or I for sure would start him. I have to think about it more. But to say there's no chance, I won't hop aboard that.
See you soon. There's a chance.
Oh, there's a chance.
What I will say is I thought Nathaniel Brown was very good in this game. The way that he was inverting into the middle.
Easy to look good against Curacao.
That is fair, but some German players for a period in the first half managed to do that. So I was impressed with Nathaniel Brown. Obviously gets on the score sheet. That's not really his game. I wouldn't expect many more goals at this tournament. But in terms of having him maybe he is sort of the antidote of what I was talking about, where Germany maybe were a little bit undermanned in the center of the field. He can invert into the middle. He can do that over David Raum, who I think is the other option in that position. And so I think we're going to see plenty more of him at this tournament.
Yeah. I still think ultimately, like a lot of the frustration that I saw previewing Germany and lead up to this World Cup around Nagelsmann is a little bit overblown. It feels like it's a little bit related to his time at Bayern Munich and some of the kind of the interpersonal relationships there more than anything else. Because to your point about Sané, to the point about Nathaniel Brown, to the point about a few other players that maybe were, if not controversial, that at the very least debated, and other people like could have been called up and gotten their first cap or their second cap or what have you. This feels a little bit like what Thomas Tuchel has done with England, except in this case, it feels like he still has called up the best players to fit his system and kind of the best players from a technical, tactical, attacking perspective. Whereas Tuchel, I guess we'll see. But
sounds different then.
It still just seems to me like maybe you call up Said Al-Mala from FC Köln, but like, I don't know. Is he more of a proven entity than Sané? Does he have the relationship with Nagelsmann that Sané does? No. So I feel like in the end, you've made smart choices there if you're Nagelsmann, albeit against the Curacao side that let you score 7.
Yeah. Taylor, as a person who previewed Germany, as you say, they've gone into this tournament not as one of the key favourites to go all the way, which is unusual for Germany. Is there anything that makes you think they are underestimated, under the radar, if that's even possible for Germany to be?
I mean, one is just like what we've just been saying, that it feels like it's a team that Nagelsmann selected because they fit what he wants. And with that, there's an understanding of what he wants from the players. And so he can get players to do multiple different roles, like Kimmich, and kind of taking up half spaces, but also being in between the midfield and the defense, but also sometimes being a midfielder. He has Sané, who can stretch and run at people and create, but then also lay off and cross and still drop back and do defensive work. It feels like he's selected a group that fit what he wants and give him different looks, because we don't even see, to my mind, we don't see Voltemade in this game. Does he come in at all?
No, I don't remember seeing him.
So like if Havertz as like a false 9 or as a more mobile 9 isn't giving you what you want, you have other looks in there. And I do think there is more creativity in different ways to this Germany team. Ultimately, I think it's just like, are they deep enough? Do they have enough top end talent? Can they end up getting goals when they need to? Do they have enough proven goal scorers? But I think, like, again, we can't really take a ton away from this game aside from the lineup. But I think we can say, at the very least, it felt like a team that didn't get like overly stressed by the equalizer and still found a way through and still found a way to make things happen and get some goals. And it's about as strong of a start as you could hope for if you're Germany.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if against higher caliber opponents, they are able to have enough control and oxygen in the center. Because I look through that team, just looking at the lineup now, there's plenty to be impressed by, but that midfield double pivot of Pavlovic and Mecha, as good as they are individually, I just don't know if against the best teams that's going to give them the control that they want. And of course, you can have Kimmich move into that position from right back, but is that then going to make them weak in defensive transition? Is that going to open up create open space for opponents to exploit? So there's still plenty to be answered about this Germany team, but despite the way they started in the first half, this was clearly, given the scoreline, a very positive start for them.
Yeah, I think 7 goals is quite positive. I would concur with that. Very good.
It's not quite 1-0 against Haiti, but you know.
But what is, hey, yeah. One of those games slightly nervier than the other for respective fans there. All right, one more game on this Sunday to talk about. Sweden 5, Tunisia 1 in Monterrey. Pretty comprehensive stuff for Sweden in the end here. Yasin Ayari of Brighton top and tailing it with goals in this one. Isaac and Gyökeres, the star forwards of the Premier League, getting on the score sheet as well. It was 2-1 at the half, but Sweden pulling ahead a bit more in the second half as well. Taylor, I'm looking at the possession stats, and Tunisia had 51%, and the Tunisia I saw didn't offer an awful lot in this game. So that stat has surprised me slightly.
That surprises me as well, because there's the point, I think, at the first hydration break that it was 70-30 in favor of Sweden. And Sweden made this impossible for Tunisia in the first half. They pressed, they kept pressing, they forced turnovers, they forced Tunisia to go long early and often, and they really just forced them to clear, hopefully, and try to find a pass, and usually nothing came off. And it was just absolutely suffocating from Sweden. And it's not just the scoreline. It's not just that they like keep scoring after for a moment there is the shaky period when Tunisia score 1. It's just that they did answer some of the questions I think a lot of people, myself very much included, had about this team. Because my preview for Sweden was focused strongly on the lack of kind of existing relationship between Alexander Isak and Viktor Gyökeres when it comes to playing for Sweden. They'd only had the one start together under Graham Potter, who himself doesn't have a ton of reps when it comes to being Sweden's manager. And I wasn't sure how it was going to work. And they had looked more effective in a 3-4-2-1 than a 3-4-1-2, which is what I would say they were in tonight. And yet there were still moments of rustiness. There were still moments when like Gyökeres holds the ball a little bit too long or doesn't find the pass, or maybe Isak makes a run slightly too soon. So there is still a little bit of figuring out. But there were moments when they looked like they played together for a very long time. Yeah. And the second goal, was it? Or is it the third goal?
It's the second goal.
Where it's like Gyökeres, it's exactly what you want with the two of them starting. It's Gyökeres dropping in, like chesting it down, and then somehow hitting. I was saying, like, I don't know how a layoff can also be a through ball, but it was, because he chests it down and then like reverse hits the volley in behind for Isak to run onto. Isak gets on the end, takes him on 1v1, cuts inside, gets the shot away. Probably should have been saved, but still there's obvious signs that those two do have like developing but good chemistry. And then I felt like the rest of the Swedish attack was really strong around them. The midfield was really stable. They looked like a pretty strong team.
Yeah, there were things to enjoy from Sweden in this game. I enjoyed the front two playing together and sort of watching them figure those things out in real time. Lowery was talking about on the broadcast with Tyler Terrence on Fox, like they're players that have so much quality. You sort of have to trust them to figure it out. And I think they have, or at least they will continue to work on that process. I also enjoyed from Sweden some of the ways that they created overloads early in this game. They dominated possession early on in this match, Sweden, and then they get the lead, and then they're much more defensive and allow Tunisia to try to create something with their possession. But Sweden playing out of this 3-5-2, where it was the front two that we've talked about already, and then it was Ayari and Nygren as the two free eight sort of for this team, and Ayari scored a brace, and Ryan, you said top and tail or whatever you said. I liked what you said. He scored a couple of really nice goals and capped it off in this game. And then you had the 6 for Sweden as well, and then the back 3. So that was their 3-5-2. And in the first half, Tunisia were also defending with a back 5, and they had a midfield 3 with 1-6 and 2 3-8s, and then they had the front 2. And Sweden in possession then had the natural 3v2 advantage in their back 3 center backs against the front 2 for Tunisia. And the way Tunisia tried to deal with that was by pushing Hannibal, who was playing as one of their 8s in midfield, up to make a 3v3. Well, the problem is when Hannibal would go, there wasn't a whole lot of pressure still on the Swedish center backs, but Tunisia were not allowing ball progression on the dribble. But when he would go, Hannibal, then all of a sudden you still had Sweden's original midfield 3, and Tunisia were down to 2. And so all of a sudden you had a 3v2 in midfield. And Tunisia were so scared to push a number out of their back line forward to negate that numerical disadvantage that they were at, because if they do that, 2 of the best strikers on the planet are up man-to-man against their opposing center backs. I mean, it was just a nightmare for Tunisia in the early stages of this game. They didn't really have answers. They changed some things in the second half and moved Hannibal into the front line and shifted how they defended. It was just a little too late. So I like that from Sweden. I liked how they caused some problems for Tunisia. I thought Tunisia were incredibly slow to adapt and adjust in the face of what, I mean, if I can notice it, it's a pretty obvious problem, right? So they should have been able to adopt and change some things there. What I will say about Tunisia is this was the game of them shooting themselves in the foot, right? The first 3 goals you can trace directly back to their errors. Graham came in.
4 of the 5. Yeah.
True. Yeah, fair enough. Graham came in on the second goal. It's the nice Gyökeres layoff to Isak, and then Isak scores. And immediately, like right as you came in, they were showing the replay, and Graham's like, oh, goalkeeper. You know, Chamak has a chance to make that save and doesn't. And that's coming on the back of him clattering off his line to try and deal with the initial Victor Lindelof ball over the top.
I like that he was like, I'm going to come off my line. Catch it? No. Strong punch? No. Like, floppy wrist kind of slap into the ball. That should do it.
Yeah, I mean, it was just Chamak had a poor game, and then you had the captain as well, Skiri, on the third goal that Sweden score. He gives the ball away, and it's in zone 4. It's a nightmare. It's absolute nightmare. So I really don't have a good sense of how good Sweden were in this game, because I don't think they had to do very much in this game.
Yeah, it's a really strange one, because like it is a things can be 2 things situation, I guess, because the 5th goal is the exact same thing. It's basically like an unnecessary turnover and then a slap on the wrist, aka a rocket shot in the back of the net. 4 of the 5 are sort of mistakes or strong mistakes influencing the goal. But then it's also Sweden taking advantage. It's also Sweden kind of pressing their luck, pressing their opportunities. They have other like really good chances. I wanted to be sarcastic about Gyökeres, and I take your point that they have 2 world-class strikers, but he also has at least 1, if not 2 chances.
1 and 3/4. Sure. Anywhere in there is fine.
He redlines the crap out of one of his shots, and it just goes like maybe outside the stadium, and you can see him look like, I didn't need to hit it that hard. And so I think there's still like calibrating to be done, but I thought like their overall shape worked really well. I thought Nygren in behind the 2 of them, to your point, kept giving them kind of ways to overload the midfield, but then he could
I was
pop
going to
up
ask
in
about
different
him
areas.
because of all the players at this World Cup, I think you guys have asked me more questions
Mhm.
about Benjamin Nygren than anyone else. And,
Nygren, my bad.
Either or. The Scots have probably got that wrong, knowing us.
Good
But like, how
Probably.
did he play? Because I was interested when the lineup came out that he was going to play as a 10 behind two central strikers.
Well, and the reality is he didn't even really play as the 10. He played as sort of even more withdrawn as an 8 who
Okay.
had freedom to go a little bit wider, but in midfield still. I think of the two 8s that Sweden used in this game, Ivory was clearly the better one. And maybe there's
What gives you that impression?
maybe there's a reason he plays for Brighton and Nygren doesn't. I'm not totally sure about that. I didn't think he was especially involved because after the first 25 minutes or so of this game, Sweden didn't really have any impetus to actually go and attack. And it seems like that's the phase of play where he's going to be most impactful. So I think we will see more of him and see more of exactly what this Sweden team is made of in the next 2 games, which I'm suddenly now fascinated by. Those games against Japan and the Netherlands, Sweden do not look like a team that's going to allow you to just bowl over them. They look quite physical. They have real quality in the attack. They have big bodies in the back. There's something here, how they compare against a team that actually gets through 90 minutes without making 4 giant mistakes. Different question.
And Sweden has like at so many different points been a team that I wanted to be excited about in other tournaments and in other games I've watched them play. And then they ultimately like aren't as exciting, or they're not as maybe attacking as they could be, or they end up being really sort of defensively oriented, and you don't get much like fun from them. You don't get much enthusiasm watching them. Like I think they're a very fun team that have again a lot of strength in a lot of different areas and some depth to go behind it. And so like against Japan, for a moment I thought like, oh no, Japan will like do the exact same thing and then counter on them, but also like then they can get countered themselves, and the Swedes are in very good position to deal with counterattacks and have a really strong, experienced like back 3. I think to Joe's point, it's a really interesting group, and I think Sweden being fun and attacking and scoring goals isn't really a thing I expected. I think credit to Graham Potter and his group of clones that he has around him that are also helping him coach. Sweden's entire coaching staff look like poorly cloned Graham Potters, and maybe that's the plan for the future. Maybe that's their 100-year plan.
So that's why Graham Potter's been wearing the cowboy hat in training, so they could identify the correct Graham Potter easily.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, have you not seen this?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Keep it that way.
Okay.
If you ever want to have respect for Graham Potter, because I don't know how they see him put that on and aren't just like, I can't play.
The thing that's most confusing about the clip is nobody seems to address it. He just takes training with the cowboy hat on.
Yeah. Maybe he's got a secret camera in it like Homer Simpson when he went to the Quickie Mart that time. Maybe it's that situation. He's filming training with it. You never know. Come back to Tunisia briefly. I think I'm impressed with Sweden, Taylor. I say that the fun index was much higher for me, and I don't associate them with fun. So I was pleased to see that today. But
Do you feel like I'm about to yell at you? I promise I was pleased with them.
no. But my point being that Tunisia didn't offer very much. I did preview Tunisia, and I did say that I didn't expect them to maybe not necessarily rattle the goal too many times at this tournament. There's a big changing of the old guard they've got going on with this team. It seems like it's a team in transition as well. My VSP was Hannibal related. It was that he would be among the top 3 players for chances created from open play in this group. Now, I feel like he proved my case study there a little bit, but also the other 3 teams in this group scored 9 goals today, and I'm not feeling so good about that.
It's a win for the spirit of the origin of very specific predictions, which are built when we do previews to give you an idea of something to really watch for these teams. Something about how they'll play, something about a player that's going to inspire you. And you did that, Ryan, with that VSP. So an honorary point. We're not giving you a real point. Don't think we are. But an honorary point for you. Hannibal, I was going to do a bit. I was going to have everybody guess, but I've kind of ruined it now. He led the game in touches with 74 touches. Not Lindelof in the back, not Ayari or anybody else for Sweden. Hannibal. There was a moment in the first half where I think his teammates were even a bit sick of how deep he was dropping to get on the ball. He dropped all the way to the near side center back and sort of clapped like, hey, give me the ball. Didn't get it. And then eventually after the next pass, he does get it. And then he boots the ball out of bounds, trying to play a ball over the top. He had a lot of great moments in this game. It wasn't clinical. He had a lot of phenomenal moments in this game, and I can see why he is a starter for this team, because he is that creative spark that they're going to need to actually create chances. But he is also an incredibly high volume player. So Ryan, your VSP, the nature of it was absolutely spot on. I loved watching him in this game. And Tunisia did the thing where in the first half he played on the near side just because of the broadcast angle. And then they switched the side that he was playing on for the second half. So we also got him on the near side for the second half. Dreams do come true. Made me so happy.
Ryan, if your VSP had been something to do with expected hero balls from Hannibal, because every time I looked up from the work I was doing on my laptop, he seemed to be trying to do a Paul Scholes diagonal pass about 50 yards up the field, that only about 50% of the time would actually find a teammate. But I respect
Burnley heritage there.
Yeah, I respect the ambitions.
Get an assist. Credit to him. Well done.
Very good. Excellent stuff. There we go. Congrats to Sweden, who top the group with that one. They got 3 points in the group. Of course, Japan and Netherlands with 1 point behind them. Looking ahead to Monday's games, we've got Spain, prospective favourite Spain, kicking off perhaps with Cape Verde as their opponents. Then we've got Belgium taking on Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Uruguay, and we finish tomorrow with Iran versus New Zealand, which at least one of us will be seeing with our eyes in person.
I am very excited, if not for the potential on-field product. I don't know how rip-roaring and back and forth this game is going to be, but I'm very excited. It's my first World Cup game that I'll ever go to that I can remember. I may have gone to one in '94, but I do not remember it, which to me means I did not go. But this is my first one ever, so I'm very grateful and excited for that. But then also, like, I think with it being Iran, I've said this before, I think on this stream, but at other points, that my hope and expectation is that the crowd is very welcoming to the players, because people are people are not the government. And I think that's how that will go. But I'm excited to go be in the parking lot and see tailgates and see what the atmosphere is like. I think the Iranian team probably deserves a warm reception. Not that the Kiwis don't, but I think for that alone and the atmosphere, I think that is a thing I cannot wait to experience and see.
Marvelous. Looking forward to your trip to Inglewood.
And I look forward to that game being the fourth one that you all talk about tomorrow for about 10 minutes.
That's correct.
Very good. Very good. We'll do it in your honor, sir.
Thank you.
That was World Cup Daily for Sunday. Once again, Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much for your expertise in all that you do.
My pleasure. Joe, was I being generous with 10 minutes?
Yes.
Yeah, you said 10. I thought you were going to say the last game we talked about for 10 seconds, and then you
10
said minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
30 seconds. 30 seconds a minute, something like that.
There we go. Time will tell. Time will tell. Joe Lowery, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And by the way, Sterling Albion shirt on today. Haven't highlighted it, but looking sharp today on
Beanos,
the
right, Graham?
Resplendent. That's right.
Up the Beanos.
Very good. You'll have seen that. Listen, you'll have seen that if you're watching on our YouTube. We are streaming after every group stage day on our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Link in the show notes. Graham Ruthven, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
And listener, thank you once again for joining us in this one. We'll be back very shortly indeed with so much more World Cup Daily. But for now, bye.
After show.
I've now got to do the awkward
It's the
clamber
after
over.
show until
Producer
Graham hits
Neil.
the stop button. Graham is gonna hit it soon.
Ooh.